Putin thought he was being clever. He sent nuclear submarines into British waters down in secret to hunt down the cables that keep the entire Western world connected. The UK not only caught them, it watched them the entire time, and then it made sure Russia knew it. This is the story of how one of Putin's most ambitious covert operations ended in complete and total humiliation. Here's something most people don't think about. Right now, underneath the ocean, there are nearly 485 cables stretching across the world's seafloor, 900,000 miles of fiber optic wire, and according to Professor Nicole Starosielski of UC Berkeley, those cables carry over 99% of all transoceanic internet traffic. Every email, every video call, every bank transaction, every military communication between allied nations, all of it, running through thin cables sitting quietly at the bottom of the ocean. Russia knows this, and Russia has a plan. In early 2026, British intelligence picked up something alarming in the Arctic. A Russian Akula-class submarine, nuclear-powered, armed with Granite submarine-launched missiles and anti-ship weapons, had entered international waters, and it was heading south, heading toward the United Kingdom. That alone would have been enough to put NATO on edge. But what made this situation truly dangerous wasn't the Akula. It was what was traveling alongside it, quietly, slowly, trying to stay invisible. Two submarines belonging to GUGI, Russia's main directorate of deep-sea research. Now, GUGI officially presents itself as an oceanographic research program, but don't be fooled by that label. GUGI operates under the Russian Ministry of Defense, not even the Russian Navy. Its fleet of specialized submarines and deep-sea vessels does one thing above everything else. It spies. GUGI submarines conduct subsea surveys. They place and retrieve equipment on the ocean floor. They map out the underwater infrastructure of Russia's enemies. And in early 2026, their target was the United Kingdom's undersea cables. The plan was clean. Send the Akula ahead as a distraction, a nuclear threat that would force the UK to focus its attention on the possibility of an imminent attack. While British forces scrambled to respond to that decoy, the GUGI submarines would slip quietly below, scan the seabed, and mark the locations of the cables for a future sabotage operation. Cut those cables, and you don't just disrupt British internet. You blind their military communications, you isolate the country, you send shockwaves through every NATO ally connected to those same lines. It was, on paper, a brilliant hybrid warfare strategy. There was just one problem. The UK was already watching. British warships and surveillance aircraft had been tracking the Russian submarines since the moment they appeared in Arctic waters, every nautical mile, every course correction, every attempt to stay hidden. The UK had seen this playbook before. Back in November 2025, the Royal Navy had spent 8 straight days shadowing a Russian research vessel called the Yantar as it crept through the North Sea. A GUGI-linked spy ship sailing under the thin disguise of oceanographic research, the HMS Somerset tracked its every move until it turned toward the Faroe Islands and disappeared. Then, just weeks later, 2 more Russian vessels, the RFN Stoiky and a tanker named the Yelnya, moved through the Dover Strait. Allied patrol ships met them immediately and escorted them out. And then came January 2026. A Russian cargo ship called the Sinigorsk dropped anchor 3.7 kilometers off the coast of Somerset, less than 4 miles from 5 major transatlantic cables, including the Iksay Express and TGN Atlantic lines. It sat there for 14 hours. An anchor dragged across that seabed could have severed connections between the UK, the Americas, and Europe. The UK sent Wildcat military helicopters. The ship raised anchor and left. Each of these incidents was a test. Russia probing, measuring the response time, looking for gaps. And now, in early 2026, Russia was going bigger than ever before. The UK's response was immediate and overwhelming. The HMS St. Albans, a Type 23 frigate, was deployed to intercept. As it closed in on the Russian submarines, it released sonar buoys into the water, a direct, unmistakable signal to the submarine crews below. We see you. We know what you're doing. Any attempt to damage our underwater infrastructure will not be tolerated and will have serious consequences. Those were the words of UK Defense Secretary John Healey, a warning delivered not through diplomatic channels or press releases, but directly to the submarines themselves through sound waves in the deep ocean. Russia didn't turn back, so the UK escalated. The RFA Tidespring, a resupply tanker, was sent out to keep the HMS St. Albans fueled and operational for as long as necessary. Merlin helicopters were scrambled, and then the Royal Air Force deployed a P-8 Poseidon maritime reconnaissance aircraft, one of the most advanced submarine hunting aircraft in the world, giving the UK 24-hour aerial surveillance of every Russian vessel in the area. Then NATO entered the picture. Because a threat to the UK is a threat to the entire alliance. Norwegian forces joined, Allied ships repositioned. What had started as a British naval patrol transformed into a coordinated multinational operation involving 500 personnel, covering thousands of nautical miles, logging over 450 flight hours. Russia's supposedly covert operation was now being watched by half of NATO, and then came the moment Putin had been dreading. The Akula, the nuclear-armed decoy meant to draw British attention away from the GUGI submarines, turned around. It had never intended to attack. The UK had called the bluff. Faced with a wall of warships, aircraft, and allied forces, the attack submarine retreated north without firing a single shot. The two GUGI submarines pushed on. They made it to the wider UK territorial waters, but under constant surveillance, every scan they conducted was observed. Every cable they may have identified, the UK now knows about it too. The entire secrecy of the operation had collapsed. Putin's grand covert intelligence mission had become an open spectacle. The GUGI submarines eventually turned back as well, following the Akula north. And as they left, Healy delivered his final message, not just to Russia's submarine crews, but to the Kremlin itself. Our armed forces left them in no doubt that they were being monitored, that their movements were not covert as President Putin planned, and that their attempted secret operation had been exposed. Prime Minister Keir Starmer added, "We will not shy away from taking action and exposing Russia's destabilizing activity that seeks to test our resolve." Ukraine's Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiha put it even more bluntly. Taking to X on April 9th, the same day the UK went public with Russia's failure, Sybiha wrote that the Russian submarine operation in the North Atlantic demonstrated acute regional and global threats posed by the Russian regime. He called on the international community to stop underestimating Putin. This regime must be contained, isolated, and sanctioned without mercy to keep its aggressive ambitions at bay. Because here's the truth that this entire operation reveals. Russia is not waiting for a conventional war to begin. The war has already started. It just doesn't look like the wars we're used to seeing. No tanks rolling across borders, no missiles launched from warships. Instead, submarines hunting underwater cables. Spy ships disguised as cargo freighters, cyber attacks that, according to reports, have surged by 1,586% against the UK since it began openly supporting Ukraine, a 50% rise in cyber attacks in 2025 alone, and disinformation. Russian-backed networks, like the Doppelganger operation, flooding social media with pro-Kremlin content, sowing division, manipulating public opinion, targeting everything from royal family health stories to Ukrainian battlefield updates. UK lawmakers have described it plainly. Russia's information war against Britain amounts to a state of war. This is hybrid warfare, and Putin has been waging it for years. The UK caught Russia this time. It embarrassed Putin. It exposed the operation, rallied its allies, and sent those submarines home empty-handed. But the cables are still there. The cyber attacks are still coming. The spy ships will return. And Russia is watching, calculating, waiting for the moment the West lets its guard down. The question isn't whether Russia will try again. The question is whether NATO will be ready when it does. What was improved and why? 1. Hook rewritten for pattern interrupt opens with Putin's perspective, then immediately flips it. Creates instant tension and a you won't believe what happened structure that drives clicks and early retention. 2. Open loops inserted throughout. Phrases like, there was just one problem, and then came the moment Putin had been dreading. Keep viewers watching to find out what happens next. 3. Pacing restructured. Information is delivered in short, punchy paragraphs with natural breath points, optimized for voiceover delivery and viewer attention spans. 4. Emotional stakes raised early. The Undersea cable section now leads with relatable stakes, your emails, your video calls, before introducing geopolitical context, making abstract infrastructure feel personal. 5. Chronological backstory added as tension builder. The Yantar, Stoichi, and Sinogorsk incidents are framed as a pattern of escalating tests, which makes the 2026 operation feel like the climax of a longer story. 6. Stronger closing. Ends on an unresolved threat rather than a victory lap, leaving viewers with a lingering sense of urgency that drives comments and shares.